Hey guys, and welcome to Crazy Burger. So I've purchased myself a Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. I've not even opened it yet. The seal is actually still on the box. So what I thought I'd do is do a complete out of box experience and what it's actually like to set one of these guys up. Without further ado, let's get started with the video. Okay, let's open this bad boy up and see what you see are greeted with. Interesting. So it slides out in a type of box. It's sat inside, a very different style box to their usual sort of scenarios. Oh, there's an instruction manual there. So this is actually quite different. So all we can see here, we've got your charge cable, which is a USB-C charge cable, which is quite nice. And the only other thing in the box is the instruction manual. Okay, I say manual. It's a bit of paper. Yeah. Okay, so this is the manual, and it really just tells you a little bit about the most obvious things and functions. And there's some of the stats of the actual device itself. Yeah, so let's have a look at the actual unit. There's not really much point in that. It doesn't actually tell you a heck of a lot. So let's get this thing opened up and we'll have a look at the device. Okay, so it comes in this nice sort of packet. We'll just take that off, and this is what we're dealing with. Oh, it's actually quite light. It's kind of quite surprisingly light. The buttons are quite smaller than I was expecting to. We've got some dual thumbsticks, quite nice. Smallish D-pad. It's actually a lot smaller than I thought it was. I thought it was a lot bigger. The D-pad seems a lot smaller, and the buttons seem quite small. You've also got some shoulder buttons as well here. So a quick look at what we're dealing with. So we've got some, I guess they're either vents or stereo here. You've got your memory card slot, you've got your USB-C charging, headphone jack. This is the home button. That's kind of unusual. So you've got your shoulder buttons. So there's a little bit of a gap in between there, you can see that, and they are too. They seem okay. You've got your start and select, and that's bizarre. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. You can see that start and select button at the top. It's really like, oh wow, that's weird. That looks like a mini HDMI out. I guess that's for putting it onto the TV. And you've got some kind of button. I guess that must be the on-off button. So you see here you've got your volume up and down on the side. Okay, there's no doubt this is very different to the other devices that I've got for Retroid Pocket. You can look at the buttons. Okay, there's your sort of buttons. They are actually quite small. Now this unit has definitely surprised me for how small and light it feels. Obviously these thumbsticks do actually click in. The actual D-pad is pretty small as well, but it seems okay, it seems alright. So what we'll do, have a quick comparison to some of the other devices I've got, and then we'll get it turned on. Okay, so this is the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus. You can see the design of it. It's nice, but it's very, very different. You can see size-wise it's not really that much different to the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. The size is kind of a similar. Obviously the Retroid Pocket 3 is definitely a little bit longer and the screen is obviously bigger. So it's massively different in design. Your thumbsticks are now both at the bottom instead. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Very different approach, which is refreshing, no doubt about it. So another really quick comparison in size here. You see this is the PS Vita, and the size is actually quite similar. I think the PS Vita does have a slightly larger screen. Maybe it might actually even be the same. You could probably even get a screen protector for a PS Vita and put it on there, maybe. See, it's pretty similar in size. Maybe, yeah, it's definitely feels different. It's got a sort of different texture and plastic to it. It's probably not as high quality the Retroid Pocket 3, but yeah, it's actually pretty similar in size to a PS Vita. Interesting. And might as well compare it to my recent purchase, which is a Cade EXP, which is actually larger than the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. That actually surprised me. I thought the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus was a lot bigger. It's actually heavier, the EXP as well. I'd have to admit here that the D-pad on the EXP is definitely better than the Retroid Pocket 3. Although the Retroid Pocket 3 obviously has the thumbsticks, and the buttons actually feel better on the EXP as well, that's surprisingly. Though I don't really like the placement of these buttons here. And the shoulder buttons are pretty nice, I guess. So I'll have a quick look. Kind of similar to the Retroid Pocket 3, that one has a slightly different, softer feel to it, right enough. But yeah, I suppose the EXP does stand out pretty nice in comparison to that. That's interesting as well. It's got a kind of a smaller screen though. Just it's got larger bezels around the top here. Okay, before we turn the unit on, I got this unit from Droids. I purchased it myself from droids.co.uk, and they are absolutely fantastic. I've bought many devices from them now, handheld gaming devices. They stock a lot of different things, and I would highly recommend them. They're probably not the cheapest, you could probably get them cheaper elsewhere, but they are very reliable and a very reputable company, and I would highly recommend them. You can follow them in all these places. Absolutely amazing company, brilliant. So I actually can't get over how light this unit feels. It feels quite nice in the hand, but it's actually a lot smaller than I was expecting it to be. I thought it would be a little bit larger from the pictures and videos that I've seen so far, but I think it's actually quite small. Maybe give it in comparison to a sort of mobile phone as well before we sort of go anywhere. So that's like a mobile phone. You can see it's pretty much the same size as a standard mobile phone. This is a Samsung Galaxy S10, I think. And you can see it's pretty much the same size lengthwise as a phone. So that maybe gives you a little bit of context to the size of this unit. Right, enough blabbing, let's get this unit turned on. So I'm guessing it's probably the on-off switch here. Yes, it is. Here we go. So we'll have a look at see what this is like from a fresh turn-on experience and what you would probably get. Now a lot of the time, a lot of people sort of probably have these already set up and good to go, with ROMs already added. So in my experience, these units are probably a nightmare to set up, but very, very capable. The screen looks really nice. So most likely we'll probably have to set up Wi-Fi and all the rest of it. And yeah, it's obviously Android based. Okay, next, set up your language. B button, oh, it goes back. Next, next, connect to the internet. Okay, I'll do that and I'll come straight back to you. Okay, so once you've set up your Wi-Fi, you'll get the open the time zone. Now it's using the sort of Nintendo Switch or the Nintendo sort of buttons, so it's A to sort of confirm and B to go back, which is, yeah, kind of annoying if you're not really into a Nintendo Switch thing. Open the time settings. It's already got the right time, so we'll kind of move on from that. Enable Google Play services, I guess we will say yes. Pre-install apps, so here we've got some apps that we could potentially pre-install. I guess we'll probably say yes to a lot of these and we'll get them installed. Some of these are quite cool. I guess we'll go with yeah, Dolphin for handheld, and we'll get them in on anyway. DuckStation for PlayStation. Guess we'll add most of these. Flycasters for Dreamcast. Gamepad test, not really bothered with that. That's just for your N64 stuff. Yep, tick that. Not sure about that. Mainly that's if you're going to be streaming stuff, I guess. Minecraft Java Edition for Android. Yeah, why not? We'll do that. Pokemon, nah, not for me. PSP stuff. Yep, Redream, do that for Dreamcast 2. RetroArch, might as well. San Andreas Unity. Yeah, why not? Spelunky. Steam Link, yes, we'll do that. I'll give that a bash as well. Let's see what there else. Oh, yep, that's your Saturn stuff if you want to be playing Saturn games. Oh, that's your PS2 app too. So yeah, I would probably go ahead and just get most of these installed. I'm not really sure about all of them right enough. I'm not going to install every single one. Scum V, yeah, let's do that. Serious Sam, why not? Shattered Pixel Dungeon. Why not? Anyway, that's them. I guess this is going to take a good 5 to 10 minutes to actually install, so I'll come back to you in a little moment. Okay, apologies, obviously going quite dark, just as the camera's automatically adjusting so we can see this screen better. So we've got the option of two launchers here. We've got RP3 Plus and the AOSP launcher. I think we'll go with the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus launcher. That sounds better to me. Configuration complete. You can use Retroid Pocket 3 now. And unfortunately, yeah, you'll probably have to add all your own ROMs here. I'm wondering if there is actually a memory card inserted already. Probably not. Let's have a look. like there's not actually any memory card included, so you'll have to put in your own memory card. Okay, get yourself a reasonably sized memory card. This is a 64 gig and I'm going to insert it. Hopefully it will ask to format it and it will set up the folder structure that we actually need. See, that's actually not the easiest to get open, so it is held on with a little tether. So we can just get that and insert this in here. It should recognise it right away at the top of the screen. So tap to set it up. How will you use this SD card? For apps, files, blah blah blah, or use for portable storage. Yeah, it's just going to be on this handheld only, I think. So format the SD card. Okay, just before I put some games on here, I can see that the internal storage is actually quite a lot. There's 120 gig worth of storage, which is quite cool, and I've obviously got a 64 gig SD card added as well. So you might not necessarily need to actually add an SD card, but I've done the setup wrong for the SD card. I've chose the wrong option, so we'll have a look at that and do that again so that we can then get some games added to it. Okay, so I've clicked on the memory card again. I think we probably should have chose the format as portable option so that we can then add games onto the PC. I guess you can do the internal thing by connecting to a computer and transferring ROMs that way, but this is probably a little bit easier, I guess. Yeah, so let's do the format and do this all over again. Ready for use. So you can see here that it's now called the RP3 Plus, which now we can actually use it with this device. So sorry about that, wrong option that I've chosen there. Go back to the sort of Retroid emulation setup. We can go to setup now and create the ROM folders. Oh, setup and create ROM folders. And then obviously it gives the option to the SD card. So if you choose that instead of the internal directory, it should then set up all the correct folders onto your SD card, and then we can put it onto the laptop and add ROMs that way. Let's have a go now. Okay, this is on the laptop, just a rather crude look. You can see you can choose the option here. You can see you've got all your folders that have now been created for you, where you can actually add your ROMs and stuff. I think, yeah, Retroid Pocket 2 games. You probably add all your BIOS files, ports, and all your ROMs and all the different folder setups there. So yeah, if you're not used to this kind of setup, then you probably want to avoid it. But if you want the challenge, then it's pretty cool to get stuck into and sort of learn your way as you go. But just be wary, it's not a plug and play device. You're going to have to put a lot of lead work into this. So I'm going to sort of add some ROMs, BIOS files, all that kind of thing. I can't show you how to do that, unfortunately. You're going to have to do some investigation. Use Google, it's your friend, and get some ROMs, BIOS files, and then you should be able to play them on your device. So I'll go through that and then we'll get back to the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus with some games added and we'll take it from there. Okay guys, so here we are back with the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. So at this point I've probably been playing this a good couple of weeks now, just sort of familiarise myself with all the different games, apps that you can use, and we're going to look at some of the sort of higher end stuff. So obviously I've got all my ROMs sort of added now, so the best way to do it is go to the Retroid launcher up here. Now this is basically just a front end for all your sort of games. Okay, so this is basically just a front end for all your games that you've got added to the folders. So if you press the emulation button, you can see this is all the sort of formats that you can play. Now I've not added ROMs to every single thing in here, but what I'll do is show you how to actually do it. Once you've got your ROMs added, go into your chosen format, and then you can go to the ROMs button here, and then add the game path. So basically you're just adding the path where you've actually saved the games. You can probably do a scan, I guess, but my default is in the SD card. Then do a scan, and then it'll bring in any games. It should probably try and load in some of the game art as well, which is kind of cool. And then you can just play the games from here. Now sometimes you might need to actually do some button mapping, and also you can from this point you can actually change which emulator it's actually using. So like I said, this is basically just a front end. So up the top here you can choose which app or sort of emulator that you want it to use. So you might want to maybe use something that's not the default. It's defaulting to RetroArch, which probably should be fine for most stuff, but some other things you might want to choose different sort of apps that are out there that are maybe more suitable to play it. But one thing I want to mention here is that you might need to go into the actual apps themselves to set up sort of button mapping. We'll maybe quickly play a game here just to show it. So we'll just start this automatically. So yeah, you want to get rid of the buttons here, just press this little button in the corner. So one thing that's quite good about this little device is the sound is fantastic. It really is a great sounding device, and the battery life is brilliant. I've definitely got a solid 67 hours out of this thing. Turn it down just slightly. So I've definitely had a solid 67 hours battery life on it, and it charges maybe in about 2 to 3 hours to get a full charge on it too. But yeah, so far this is just really having a quick look at Sonic Advance. Anyway, I'm not going to mess too much time with that. So to get out the game, there's a few ways. You can maybe use the screen, or just hold the home button at the side here, just press it twice, and you can sort of jump back to the emulator here. So if you have an issue with button mapping, you can't actually solve it within Retroid Launcher. You need to go to the specific app that's running the game. And it might differ. Obviously, if you're playing the N64, it would be this one, PSP, Dreamcast, for example. Now, I definitely had an issue with Dreamcast button mapping, so I had to sort of go into the Redream app itself and set it up, and then it worked through the sort of front end. And one thing I don't like is that bottom of the screen, the touchscreen is a little bit strange. Now, what you need to do in here is just fix the button map. It seems to default all the time to touchpad for some reason, which is kind of annoying. So you need to change it to Retroid Pocket controller. And then I found you actually have to go in and remap all the buttons again, which is a little bit of pain. So you just press A to sort of get started, and then go through the whole thing. Left joystick up is basically this, and then just keep going through it all. Left joystick down, that one, and so forth till you get it. Now this is just an example. It will differ depending on what app and what emulator you're actually running, so bear that in mind. If something doesn't work, try going to the app itself and try and figure it out there. You might have issues with BIOSes and the like as well. You might need to point some of the folders to the right, some of the apps to the right folders, for example. A bit of a pain, but yeah, it's just one of those things you're going to have to do. So that's that. Let's come out of there. So let's go back to the app. Now, the one thing I don't like is the touchscreen, especially the bottom part of it. It just doesn't work very well at all. The rest of the touchscreen is absolutely fine, but swiping up from below just always seems to be a bit of an issue for me. Anyway, let's go back. What I'm going to do is run through some of the games and some of the higher devices from N64, Gamecube. We're going to have a look at PSP, PlayStation 2, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast we'll have a look at as well, and I think that'll do us. And overall, I think this device is fantastic, but it is a nightmare to set up. It's going to take a while to get everything sorted and everything in the right folders pointing to the right places. But what I'm going to do is play through some games. I'll talk about it as I go and maybe give you some tips to try and help you along your way too. Okay, so let's move on to start with Nintendo 64 and have a look at some of the games here. Now this is definitely one you will probably have to go into the actual app and mess about with the button mapping depending on what game you're playing. It can be a little bit of a pain, obviously. The Nintendo GameCube controller was a little bit strange. Let's go straight into GoldenEye. I'm not sure what's going on with the borders at the side, to be honest. It's a little bit strange, but one thing is for sure, that the performance is actually pretty good. Well, you can see at the top there, the frames per second seems to be pretty low, but you can see the game actually plays quite well. I've had no issues with N64 at all. Button mapping is a tad strange, I guess, but it performs pretty well. Oh, my aiming isn't particularly good. Now this game's actually been released in the last couple of weeks on sort of Xbox, PlayStation sort of thing, and I thought the performance was a bit glitchy, which was weird. But anyway, yeah, that's that game. Let's have a jump back in and we'll try another one. So just press the home button twice and it jumps out. It'll just save your progress here. Let's have a look at Quake. Now this one actually impressed me how well this played too. I thought the performance was quite good. I've played this one a few times on different devices and it's struggled and this one actually seems pretty decent, and it surprised me a little bit. So it shows you that this little device is certainly very capable of doing some decent stuff. That screen is a little bit dark right enough. You can actually make it a little bit brighter by just dragging down. There are some options here to make it brighter, I think. Yeah, There's options up the side as well. I'm not entirely sure what all these are. There are some brightness options here. You can sort of mess about with, I guess, the contrast and brightness. And different screen mappings and stuff. I don't really know how that works. I'll need to do some investigations to it, to be honest. But yeah, you can see this game seems pretty decent. I'm quite impressed at how well it actually performs. So one more game before I jump on to another format. Look at Cruis'n USA, which also, as you can see, performs quite well too. This one struggles in a lot of other devices too, but seems absolutely decent, fine to me. So far N64 definitely a tick for me. I'm not going to say it's be perfect for every sort of game, but of the ones I've tried, I think the performance seems pretty good. And if it's playing some of these games, there's no doubt it'll play a lot of other games too. I'm quite impressed with that so far. Pretty good. Whoa. Now obviously I'm not really going to go through the lower end stuff. I'll have a quick sort of bash at a game, but this stuff plays absolutely fine. You're not going to have any massive issues playing sort of lower end stuff. Like obviously this is Flea, which is a relatively new game, and it's absolutely fantastic, really addictive. And I'd highly recommend it if you've never actually played it before. Great little soundtrack, very addictive. It's very different too. I love it. Nice. Okay, let's come to Nintendo GameCube. Now this one, yeah, this has definitely surprised me. I'm going to say right off the bat, it's not going to play everything. Okay, it's not going to play everything perfectly. Now, out of these games, it plays all of them pretty well, apart from F-Zero, which we'll probably jump into first just to give you an idea of something playing not particularly well. Let's have a quick bash. Now, you can actually change the graphics. You can see at the top here it tells you the resolution scale is 1.0. Which is basically just how it was originally, and you can lower that, but it didn't really make a lot of difference to the performance to me, so I kind of just left it the way it was. You can see here that the gameplay it's just impossible basically. It's struggling to, because the frame rate up here is just all over the place, impossible. I'll get to the actual game itself so you can get an idea of what to expect. Now I've seen this game play well. The Steam Deck plays it really well, but this little device just struggled at this particular game. However, the other games that I've got actually play quite well. So I think this game is just too much. I'm not sure if there's options to sort of help in the background of the app that can maybe try and make this more playable, but yeah, that is what it is. I mean, the graphics are fine, but yeah, it's just unplayable, isn't it? Yeah, that's a pity because this little device is quite cool, but yeah, it's just never going to play this, is it? You can try, maybe turn the sound off and see how you go, but yeah, such a shame. I'm sure there might be some settings you could maybe fix to make this a little bit more playable, but this is pretty much it, standard without sort of messing about with any settings at all. Okay, so that doesn't play well. Let's jump through the other games that I've got here. Let's have a look at Zelda Wind Waker. So talking about save states, if you want to access the save states, there are options on the left hand side of the screen here. You do quick saves, quick load for example. There are some options here for emulation settings, taking screenshots, example. Let's do a quick load and we'll load in to give you an idea where I'm up to. And it loads straight into where I'm at in the game, which is pretty much just at the start. And as you see, this game is very playable indeed. Button mapping is a little bit strange, right enough, but I definitely have no issues with it. It seems to be working pretty well. And this is good. I'm a huge fan of this game. It's probably about one of the few Zelda games that I actually did play and finish back in the GameCube days. It's sticking to a very solid 30 frames per second here, so that's obviously making the game very playable. Yeah, love it. Anyway, let's move on to another game. So just press the home button twice, you can straight back to the main screen. Let's have a look at Mario Dash. He sounds excited. Yeah, let's jump into the game quickly. So here we go, we're in the game. Didn't have any massive problem with this as well, apart from button mapping. The button mapping's kind of all over the place a little bit, but oh, going backwards, that never helps. See, it looks really nice. Frame rates are pretty solid, I guess, quite high up. The game's very playable. So far I'm really impressed with this little device. It's playing a lot of these higher end games that were obviously been struggling on a lot of the more recent devices. It's probably one of the first devices at this price range that plays these games really well. Obviously you've got the Steam Deck, which pretty much blows everything else out the water, but it's obviously a lot more expensive. This is a little bit cheaper, and it's obviously not the size of a Steam Deck. It's more pocketable and portable, which is always welcome. I'd like to see someone stick the Steam Deck in a pocket. Not happening. Yeah, this is working really, really well. Oh, cheeky. Anyway, okay, let's have a look at the last game, Soul Calibur 2. Now, personally, I've always preferred the Dreamcast version of Soul Calibur 2, but this is a nice sort of variant, and you can actually play as Link as well from the Zelda series, which is kind of nice. I think we'll just, for argument's sake, we're just going to go Link anyway. Not my favourite character at all, but yeah, it must be done. Now turn the sound up just a little bit and I'll stop talking. You can hear how loud it gets. Pretty impressive, sorry. I'll deafen everybody, sorry. I'll just show you how impressive that sound is. Oh, eat that, Cassandra. Oh, okay. Such a nice game, and you can see here it's playing fantastically well. It's got solid frame rates up in the high 50s and 60s there, so that's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Very impressed indeed with Gamecube, apart from F-Zero. I'm sure there's a few others that don't play as well, but there's plenty here that really play well. I'm really impressed. Can maybe even get the more stuff like Metroid Prime playing too, which would be great. Okay, moving on a little bit. Something maybe I want to touch on is sort of arcade stuff. I had some issues, basically because it's obviously trying to use the wrong sort of emulation within RetroArch, so you can change that if you press the edit button. You can change which core it's running basically. So for the game I was playing, Ninja Baseball Batman, it had to be the Final Burn Neo, but you may need to change that to whichever game you're playing, so it can be a little bit of a pain just jumping in and save, but you'll know if it doesn't start, you know it's got the wrong sort of core or emulator running. So let's have a look at Baseball Batman. Oh, that was something else and kind of remembered is that the button mapping wasn't working for start and select, so I just used the on-screen one to get a coin, and then the rest of the buttons seemed fine. You can also change that within the back end, pressing this RetroArch button here, and that'll fix it. If you go into the button mapping, you can mess about. But for the purpose of this, I'm just going to play the game and show you how it runs. Definitely an old favourite. I love playing this game, and it, as you know, it probably struggles on a lot of other devices, especially the lower stuff. It doesn't play at full frame rate, but you can see it's running really well on here. Okay, we'll move on to PSP. Now, PSP is also extremely impressive on this device. I'm going to play some games that definitely struggle on a few other devices, and I'll go to the old favourite, God of War Chains of Olympus, and this will probably surprise you how well this plays. Oh yeah, so just go to the left here and you can access save states, settings for the PSP emulator. You can see here, these are the default settings that it's at. Now if you have any issues, you can put frame skip on, and then add a number of frames as well. You can do some button mapping in here too. Now this is the settings I've got, and it's running absolutely fine. But if you do come across any issues, you can sort of mess about here. Now I've got the graphics, let's see what the graphics were just at, the standard 1 PSP. Now you may want to up that if you prefer, you want to see it a little bit smoother or sharper graphics, you might want to up that, but again it might affect your gameplay. So here's my load state, straight into the actual game. And this definitely surprised me how well this plays on this. I mean, it's a relatively small device, but it's obviously got quite big power working on the background. Again, I think it seems to be performing relatively well. Say you don't really see many devices playing God of War this well. I think you have to agree that is really quite impressive. And eat that. How cool is that? Anyway, that's the first game. Let's have a look at some other PSP games. So you can just press the home button again to go out, or if you want to save, just press that and you can do save up the top here. And that'll just save your sort of progress just like that. But anyway, you want to get out, let's go to Tekken 6 and have a bash at that. So at this point I am really impressed with this little device. It is an absolute pain in the butt to actually set up. It takes a lot of work, but the rewards are good. The performance is excellent. And if you don't mind sort of going through all that hassle, then you'll love this little device. It's really, really cool. Yeah. Yeah, whatever. Now, I'm not really that keen on the buttons. I think they're just a little bit too small for my liking. The same with the D-pad. I guess they're kind of been limited due to the size of the device, the size of the buttons they can use, but I feel they're just too small. It does become a little bit of a pain in some games. I almost feel like Nintendo Switch size sort of buttons, that sort of size range, and it kind of is probably better suited to smaller fingers rather than sort of larger fingers. Yeah, performance is good though. Okay, let's move on to Outrun as well. This one is also a struggler at times. And you can see I've not got frame skip on, so it's working without even bothering with frame skip or anything. So far, very impressive.
Keep passing cars.
Yep.
Let's start.
Don't judge the gameplay, please. Oh. Never get used to that crazy sliding. I know.
Drift more. Let's start. What's up?
Drift too late, love it. Anyway, you can see guys, this game is running absolutely perfectly. I love it. Let's move on. Okay guys, let's have a look at PlayStation 2. Now this one you might need to get into the actual app itself, mess about, make sure your BIOS files are pointing to the right folder. For example, you might need to find out more about that online, especially what sort of BIOS files you need from your PlayStation 2. But this one's had mixed results. I think it's just too far, too much to actually perform very well. And I'll give you an example. Grand Theft Auto 3 seems quite fine. That's an earlier PlayStation 3 game that seems okay, but the other two here just struggle. Let's have a quick look at it. Now we don't even need to get to the gameplay. You can see that things are struggling. So the music sort of juddering all over the place. Now I absolutely love this game. Ace Combat 4 on PlayStation 2, Sharks guys. Probably my favourite version of the games. But it just doesn't work on here very well at all. It just struggles. And you'll hear it even in the cutscenes here. It's just impossible. And forgive some of the finger marks on the screen. It's just impossible to avoid.
I was just a child when the stars
You can see it's just running too slow. It's like half rate or something. Guy doesn't sound well at all, does he? I mean, he does sound depressed at the best of time, but that's just ridiculous. He's obviously meant to sound depressed because he's, you know, I don't want to ruin it, but his family kind of dies at the start. Anyway. Okay, see if we can get to the gameplay and see if it actually performs any well, but the cutscenes are just not for happening. You really just have to jump them because it's just impossible. Which is the same because they are a huge part of this game, so to jump the cutscenes is almost criminal. See what buttons we are to use here. Yeah, it's just impossible. Yeah. Unfortunately, just impossible to play. That's a pity. Let's have a look at some of the other PlayStation 2 games. Okay, let's have a look at God of War. Unfortunately, this is pretty much the same. I didn't really see an awful lot of options in the emulator to sort of fix frame rates and maybe that kind of thing, but yeah. This is how it works as standard, which I think is what a lot of people want to see, is the out-of-box experience. So far so good though, I mean it seems okay so far. Let's sort of jump to gameplay please. I'd say it probably works a little bit better than Ace Combat, but it's not much better. You can hear it's really struggling to sort of play. You might get further if you mess about with some settings, but yeah. It's practically unplayable, I'm afraid, which is a shame. Yeah, I'd maybe stick to God of War on the PSP, at least that one is playable. Okay, let's have a look at Grand Theft Auto 3, and this one actually runs pretty well. It's not perfect, but it certainly runs better than the other two. Now you're going to have massive mixed results depending on what game you're actually playing. Some games will be fine, like this one, others will just be a mess and it's just not worth it. I just think PlayStation 2 is just a little bit step too far for this device. Okay, here we go. You can see that the performance is actually pretty decent for Grand Theft Auto 3. Maybe one of the earlier titles for the PlayStation, not perfect as you can tell. But it's certainly more playable than the other two games that we tried. It's obviously not running at full rates, but it seems pretty decent. And I'm getting lost. Deliberately. Yeah, we're starting to struggle just a little bit, but at least the game is a little tiny bit more playable. The button map seems good as well, seems to match up what we're getting told on screen here, but it's certainly starting to struggle just a little bit. The more detail and more sort of things that are going on screen, the frame rates are definitely dipping down. Anyway, that's PlayStation 2. Really up to you if you want to try it. I'm not really sure I'd recommend this device for PlayStation 2 at all. Okay, moving on to PlayStation. This one plays fine. Again, you might want to change whichever emulator you're using. I'd had defaulted to DuckStation, which is included in that, but had some issues with DuckStation, so I decided to swap it to RetroArch Swan Station, and that was much better. You might find different results from yourself, but anyway, let's have a look at Tekken 3 quickly. Now, I doubt very much you're going to have any issues at all playing PlayStation games on this. PlayStation games have been playing great on loads of devices for years now, and it's going to be fine on here too. 2 hits and he's gone. Oh, comeback's on. Oof. That's what happens when you get cocky. Jesus. Oh. Anyway, you can see PlayStation, no problems at all. Okay, another surprise for me is Sega Saturn. This, the emulation for that has definitely improved over the last few years, even the last maybe few months as well. And this one plays really well. Now you will have to get into the SAN. Hold on, I can't remember the name of it. Let's come out of there quickly. So just for Saturn emulation, you will have to go into the Yaba Sanshiro app to do some of the button mapping. I noticed when I was playing the games that the D-pad, for example, wasn't working. So just to do that, you go into the menu and the settings, and then you go down to edit key map. So you choose that. It's obviously defaulted fine, but then you go into here and you need to maybe sort of register all your key inputs, and then that should fix any issues. That's just a little tip for me, because I found that the Saturn emulation didn't work straight out the bat. It was fine, the games were playing fine, just wouldn't. Controls were not set up for some reason. Anyway, let's jump into a game, and we'll show you how cool the Saturn emulation is. Let's have a look at the old favourite, Nights into Dreams. Now don't ask me what this game is about, I've never really worked it out at all. I have to say, this is probably the best looking I've seen this game on any device. It just seems to be running perfectly well and it looks fantastic. So really impressed. I'm not entirely sure what the heck you're supposed to do in this game at all, but it's fun to play. Collect everything you see, destroy stuff, fly about, float about. What's not to love? Okay, Sega Rally. You can see another game that looks fantastically well. Graphics are nice, and oh, going backwards. Let's go forwards. And you see, frame rate's absolutely fine. It's going at a really good pace. I've seen a lot of devices play this okay, but it's obviously going a little bit slow. And sometimes it's actually helped in the gameplay. By that I mean it's probably easier to play the game. You can get around the corners a little bit easier. Oops. Yeah, I've played this level better. This is a very cool game, especially running at the proper speed. Fantastic. So let's move on to Dreamcast. So Saturn seems okay. Let's have a look at Dreamcast. Now I've obviously showed you at the start of this section that you have to probably fix the button mapping, but apart from that the games run perfectly well. Dreamcast emulation's certainly been decent recently, and this device is no different. Really good. Oh, is that so? And you can see Dreamcast so far pretty good. Let's have a look at Metropolis Street Racer as well while we're at it. Might as well. Now this game's probably quite appropriate to actually play, because this one you actually utilise these trigger buttons here for acceleration and brake, and it kind of feels just a slight bit uncomfortable trying to control the car and manoeuvre at the same time using the D-pad. Just a little bit. See, the graphics are just a little bit dark, but they do look fantastic. I love the radio advertisements in this game, and the songs are fantastic. Just think it's a little bit dark. I need to try and investigate, see if we can fix the brightness a little bit on these devices. It's just a little bit dark for me. But gameplay, absolutely fine, no issues whatsoever. And it's handling really well. Just a little bit sore in your hands. Try to utilise the D-pad, the analog stick and the sort of trigger buttons while you're accelerating and braking at the same time. I think the device is just a little bit too small to make that comfortable. So you can probably change that to maybe use these buttons here for acceleration and brake instead, which probably would give a little bit of a better experience. But for me it's just a little bit uncomfortable. So just really to summarise this little device, it is absolutely fantastic. You can set up your own Google Play account as well and go and download apps, and you can use the Steam link as well if you want to stream some games as well from your Steam library, which is obviously an option too. But a lot of the high-end stuff plays fantastically well. Nintendo 64 was really good. Gamecube was surprisingly really good too, apart from maybe one or two games won't run well. Obviously PSP was fantastic. PlayStation 2 was really too far, I think, for this machine. Sega Saturn was really decent. Dreamcast was fantastic as well. So there's a lot of promise in this little device. The battery life is fantastic at 67 hours. I like the design of it. It is really nice. The memory on it is fantastic. Some of the button placement is a little bit strange. Like having the start and select button up here is definitely a little bit odd. This is your sort of on-off switch up here. The thumbstick seems small and the button seems small, very much like a Nintendo Switch. But it's functional, it does feel nice, it's small enough to be portable. The performance is fantastic, the sound is great, battery life is 67 hours as I said, and it takes about 2 to 3 hours to charge right enough. But all in all, a fantastic little device. I really would recommend this. However, if you're a beginner and you don't really feel comfortable setting up these devices completely from scratch by yourself, adding your own ROMs and BIOS files and so forth, then you might want to think twice about it and pick up maybe something like an Anbernic device that might come complete with all that sort of stuff. If you're a beginner, I would probably avoid. Otherwise, if you love to get your teeth stuck into this type of thing, then why not? Get involved, get stuck in and enjoy it. Once you get everything set up, the rewards are fantastic because the performance of this little device is really quite impressive, especially for the money. You can obviously get better performance, but you may actually have to spend a lot more money, for example on a Steam Deck or one of these high-end Aya Neo devices that are just ridiculously priced at thousands of pounds. Anyway, this is only what, £200 to £300 depending on where you go for it. I got it from droids.co.uk, which I'll leave a link in the description. I absolutely love Droids. They may be a little bit more expensive than some other places, but their service is absolutely first class. No idea what this is. Guys, thanks very much for watching our video. Catch you in the next one. Bye for now.